Well, it's been a while since I've done one of these, and you may have noticed the background has changed. That's just because I've switched my desk around and I feel a lot better now. I can see out, and it's actually slightly warmer for my feet down here, so I might get more use done in this room. Yeah, so anyway, today I'm going to talk about something. I've got a little idea, partly formed by Gordo, and it's called "We Are All Reading the Wrong Orwell." If we read any Orwell at all. I read Orwell, I read 1984, probably about 1985 or 1986 actually, so yeah, a long time ago now. But most people are familiar with 1984 and Animal Farm. 1984 has been that popular, it's been parodied in adverts and The Simpsons, and parts of Orwell's phraseology and lexicon and all that have become, things like the phrase Big Brother have become part of our culture now. So, which will lead me on to a later point. But first, let's have a little bit of what do we know about George Orwell? His life, his history. Well, he was born Etonian educated, and he lived his life. He was at different periods in his life. He was a teacher. He was down and out, a bum, a tramp. He was an imperial police officer. He was, I think you call it a mercenary soldier, and a shopkeeper. So he certainly lived all his life, did a lot of different things. And all these things he experienced gave me ideas and helped him write the books. So 1984 and Animal Farm. Those two always appear on like the 100 greatest novels or something. In fact, I had a quick Google yesterday, and 1984 is currently sitting at number 12 of the BBC 100 greatest British novels. So they're the ones that are well known. But we should be reading more of his stuff, and we really should be reading The Road to Wigan Pier, Burmese Days, and Down and Out in Paris and London. And let me explain why. 84 and Animal Farm, they deal with big concepts. 1984 is banned in America for being pro-communist, and banned in Russia for being anti-communist. Animal Farm is, again, it's about the nature of ism, communism, socialism, whatever. His other works, they're much more closer to home. They're much more personal subjects. Burmese Days is a collection of essays about his life and his experiences as an imperial police officer in Burma. He did that for 5 years and then he quit. Partly because he never felt like he fitted in, and partly because he said he was worried that being an imperial police officer would turn him into a sadist. And don't forget, this is the early 20th century when... So you can't even say it now, but when racism against coloured people was much more acceptable for white people to perform. You can't say that now. But Orwell was worried but his experiences in Burma would turn him into a sadist, so he quit and he came back to England and he became a teacher. Down and Out in Paris and London, his experiences, it left him with health problems. He lived that life, and one of the parts of the book, one of the passages, is where the total indifference of the French doctor who's treating Orwell. Doesn't know who Orwell is. To him, he's just another English bum, just another English homeless person. And he's like, well, yeah, we'll do what we can, but he wasn't. It wasn't the best healthcare that money can buy, or the best healthcare you can be given. And then there is The Road to Wigan Pier. Now, growing up in the north, albeit 100 years after, well, a good 80 years after the book was written. This one resonates me with a little bit more as well. But Wigan Pier is 2 books in one. The first half is Orwell's experiences as being living amongst the poor and destitute, and the second half is his attempts to find a fix for it. He saw the problems firsthand, and one of the passages he writes is, just have a look at my notes here. Unhealthy food was cheaper than healthy food. A pound of sweets could be bought for pennies. So he's talking about the mass industrialisation of the the food processing, and the fact that the choice was unhealthy food was cheaper. Does that ring true today? That unhealthy food is cheaper? I think it still is. I think it does. He also made some observations which again resonate today. The poor and destitute in the northwest and all over the area will spend their money on hope rather than survival. They would gamble, they would do the pools rather than spend it on essential items. And appearance is more important than comfort. In The Road to Wigan Pier, he says, a young man will spend money on a suit, which for a year or so would not become shabby and from a distance would look good. Spend money on a suit instead of a pair of shoes or something like that. Appearance is more important than comfort. These things still ring true today. They really do. And at least Orwell, in the second half of The Road to Wigan Pier, he attempted to fix these problems. He looked into the isms, dissected them: socialism, communism, egalitarianism, looking for a fix to these problems. He did, there is a fix to them. But as a teacher, he also came up with the cycle in Wigan Pier as well. Poor education leads to poor choices. Poor choices leads to poor health. Poor health leads to a shorter lifespan. Leads to people having more kids younger because they know they're on limited time, they know they're not going to live long, and the cycle continues: poor education, poor choice, poor health, poor education, poor choices, poor health, and this cycle goes round and round and round. It always was. The poor had many kids, where the wealthy did not have so many kids. But he noticed this, he wrote about this, he lived this in the 1930s, which is getting on now for 100 years ago. And things haven't really changed, have they? Oh, another thing about Orwell was he didn't like flowery language. For a writer, for an author, he didn't like unnecessary language. He didn't like the subject he speaks about in 1984, the whittling away the dissolution of language, double plus and all that. And he actually said, and I totally do believe this as well, but if you restrict somebody's vocabulary, then you restrict their means of complaining, you restrict their means of arguing about it and all that. It's if you don't have the vocabulary to argue your position, you're a lot easier to control. You can't even articulate what's going on. Well, Orwell took that to the extremes in 1984, but he also, because he was afraid of censorship. But also, Orwell was taught by Huxley. Now, Huxley wrote Brave New World amongst his other things, and Huxley's fear was that the pertinent information, the valuable information, would be lost in a sea of trivia. And Orwell's fear was that we wouldn't be able to communicate because we wouldn't have the vocabulary, and censorship would destroy everything. I think both of those things are happening at the moment. You look at like gossip magazines and trivial stuff and internet sites and all the rest of it, and that's all it is, trivia. Anybody trying to put a message out is either shouted down or not listened to. And when you look at the way that language has been eroded and whittled away, I'm pretty sure they'd like us not to study Orwell. They'd like Orwell to be forgotten. But as I said, he's been parodied. He's been parodied in The Simpsons. His words have become part of common public parlance, like Big Brother. And I remember, I think it was about 1984, the advert for the Apple Mac was a parody on the film and all the rest of it. So, yeah. We are reading the wrong Orwell. We should read everything he wrote. Anyway, that's my little video for today. Peace out, you all.